Hey, what's happening, beautiful people? Today is going to be interesting. This right here is my OVS 270-degree awning. It doesn't belong on the ground. It belongs up there on the roof rack. Right? But we took it off this winter because we weren't doing, well, we just weren't using it a lot during the winter time. We were out snow wheeling and things like that, not doing a lot of overnighters or day-long camping where we needed the shelter. But today I'm going to be putting it back up, and there's something I've been avoiding talking to you guys about. I'm not avoiding, but I just haven't gotten around to it. And that is, if you've been watching the videos, you've noticed there's been a change to the roof rack. We used to have the Rhino-Rack Systems rack up there, and it was awesome. The thing is freaking bomber. But you probably have noticed that we've changed something along the ways, and we've converted from that, and we're trying something new, which is Rhino-Rack's backbone system and the Pioneer platform. I don't know that we'll always use the Pioneer platform. For instance, if I really did put a rooftop tent up here, I would probably get rid of the platform and just put 3 crossbars and remove the platform. But right now we're using the platform because we're still using a ground tent, and we put a bunch of other stuff up here too. So we've got the attachments on the other side. I'll show you those up close so you can see, to put shovel, axe, and things like that. We'll likely carry a roam box up here, and a few other things as time goes on. But today I'm going to be putting the awning back on, and you guys can see how I'm going to do that. It's going to be a bit interesting. The 270-degree from OVS, it's a little heavy, you know, it's like 70 pounds or something like that. So it needs to be supported really well, and I'll show you guys what I've gone through to actually build something to make that work. Okay, so first, let's go back and take a couple quick looks at the Rhino-Rack install, the backbone install. I don't want to make a full Rhino-Rack install video because there's a bunch of those out there already. A couple things I want to point out about that install. For the most part, it's pretty straightforward, and it's not super difficult, but you got to be patient and take your time, because there are some spots where, as you're going along, I had to remove the bags and things to get back in here, and you're going to be drilling through your roof, of course. In a couple of locations. There's a drill spot here, a couple of drill spots here, and then this one is actually up above, drilling down in. This one at the front gets a little bit interesting because you're actually going to be putting a mount right up in here, as you can see, that the bolts come down through the roof and into this, and then this mounts directly to the roll bar here, which gives all the support to the front and makes it quite solid. But it gets a little interesting lining those up perfectly, and you have to be really careful and take your time on those. But once it's done, this rack is incredibly solid. I've got a lot of faith in this rack after installing it. Again, the roof rack, the backbone system that you can see here comes down from the top. Bolts come in from up above through the side of the roof, and then this backbone supports it right here on the base and bolts onto where the top actually mounts onto the tub of the Jeep. So all in all, this rack is actually pretty solid. Now, is it going to support the same amount of weight that the Rhino-Rack Systems rack supports? No, it's not quite that quite that burly. But there is something that I found really interesting. As I took the Rhino-Rack Systems rack off, I actually weighed every individual part, all of it together, and that thing came to, the rack itself and all the hardware came to 194 pounds is what I was carrying up there. The interesting part of that is that the Rhino-Rack with the Pioneer platform, the backbone system and everything came to exactly half of that. 97 pounds. So I'm shedding 97 pounds off the top of the Jeep. That's pretty crazy. It's incredible. That was one of the reasons that we were switching. We knew it was a little bit heavy, but the other reason was, as I mentioned before, the ARS system wasn't super aerodynamic, and we just weren't carrying that much weight up there. So this clearly is a lot more low profile than what you saw with the Adventure Rack systems, and a lot more aerodynamic. So I get less wind noise. Did it add anything to my miles per gallon? I don't think it did really. I think I'm still the same. I'm right about 15 miles to the gallon with all the modifications we've done on the Jeep so far. So anyway, I'm gonna get started on this, and I'll show you guys some of the things I'm doing to make this work. So the way the brackets mount to the OVS system, and by the way, these are the brackets that come with the OVS awning. You can see the way these mount with 2 bolts, and this is interesting because it can really, in my mind, go 2 ways. You can put it this way, which would actually have the awning sitting about as low as possible. In fact, you could actually move it up 1 more notch, and that would really be as low as possible on the Jeep. The other way is you can flip this around and actually lift it up and have it much higher on the rack itself. So how you position this is really going to boil down to how high do you want your awning to be off the ground, and still be usable, of course. You don't want it to be so low that you're bumping your head on it, but you want it to be so high that it's also a problem sticking up off the top of the rack. So as you can see, when we place this on the rack, we're going to be bolting through a couple of spots here and sliding it to where we need it. Now, an interesting point here, you kind of want to be able to bolt into this side too, because the weight of the rack is going to want, or the weight of the awning is going to want to actually lift this up, especially when it's extended way out. For the front one, I'm actually thinking about pulling this forward like so and bolting into the front track here. So you can see we'd bolt in right into this one, and then for the outside we would continue to bolt in back here. And I think that's going to be really good, because that's going to place this bracket as far forward as possible. One of the things that always bugged me about the old setup was how far the awning sat out from the roof itself. It stuck out pretty far. So here you can see the awning does actually stick out a little bit on the sides here, and I'd like it to ride a little bit tighter. But here's the problem, guys. Imagine trying to get this squeezed in here any tighter to the side of the vehicle, because you have to be back far enough that this 270 awning can actually rotate all the way around this bar back here. And I think this solution is going to give me an opportunity to move that awning in nice and tight and snug to the side of the Jeep. If you find this information useful or you like the video, do me a favor, hit the like button and subscribe. It would help me out a bunch. So let me share something with you guys here. These are the anchors that actually come with the Rhino-Rack platforms. It goes into the T-slot, and of course the anchors are bolts, whatever bolts you want to use. Or for the awning brackets, you can see that's kind of a loose fit. So what I've done is I actually found some items that you pick up just at Home Depot. This is in the conduit section, and they usually come with a spring on here too that I literally pull off. And this also fits right into the T-slot. And then what I'll be using is a larger bolt that will screw into that as the anchor for this. And what you'll see is that actually fits much nicer in the hole and gives you a nice good bite on the bracket itself to hold the awning on. Because these are going to be sitting on something that needs to be fastened down pretty securely, we'll go ahead and put some blue Loctite on all of these. I think I've mentioned these before, but they come in really handy for jobs like this. Let me show you guys something kind of cool. I've seen a lot of people try to do this, and what they're trying to do is bridge the gap here. And as I mentioned before, if the whole weight of the awning is out here and you extend the awning out, it's going to want to try and lift this side up. Now I don't know if that's really the case yet. I'm going to go ahead and mount the awning and we'll see what happens. If that's not the case, they actually make some more refined mounts in this that I may be able to use, but these work really good. Here's the thing. To actually clamp on this side, you'll notice that there's actually no hole here for you to put anything into a T-track. So what I've got are a couple things, and what these are made for is holding toolboxes into the bed of pickup trucks. And I've of course went and got a different size bolt and length bolt here, and there's a couple of options. One literally just grabs on to the edge like this, and you can screw the bolt down through and clamp on from underneath. The other one, which is pretty cool, because there's actually a groove on the underside of the T-track, looks more like this. And what that allows you to do is put this underneath up into the groove like that, and then tighten the bolt this way. So I just have everything loosely mounted right now, and you can see the distance we are from the Jeep. It's pretty tight, it's pretty close. Not a ton of gap in between there. I still have plenty of room below for my roto packs to sit right here on the trail rack system. And if we look above, we can see we're pretty well bottomed out here on this side, so I can actually use the pieces I talked about before to clamp down this side if needed. We'll go ahead and tighten these up and see what happens when we open up the awning. Now, what I'm trying to do is make sure that I'm lined up far enough back here where the whole awning can swing out and not interfere with the back of the rack, but also give us some cover over the door back here too. And if you look around on this side, you'll notice there's a spot here where the cover comes, and I can only put the bracket that far back anyway. So we're really about as good as we're gonna get here on this particular spot. But I think that's gonna work out pretty good. I wanna go ahead and tighten these up first so I can make sure that these brackets are sitting flush and straight against the awning itself before I tighten any of these up. So what I'm gonna do now though, before I do that, is I'm gonna go ahead and get these devices anchored that I showed you guys a few minutes ago. These are actually gonna help hold down this side of the bracket as the weight comes down here. It wants to pull this down. So I pointed these out before, and what I'll be doing is shoving this end up into the track underneath. You can see this side's a little bit longer, and then we'll go ahead and put the bolt. There we go. Bolt goes down through into the hole at the bottom of the U. Then we've got a washer that'll go on to the bottom of that. And then we've got our nut to hold it all together. There we go. Snug that up. There we go. I'll do the same back here. All right, so that buttons things up pretty good in terms of the bolts, but I want to check and make sure it's going to be sitting in a good spot before I actually cinch this all up for a final torque down. Yeah, that looks really good. I mean, I've got about an inch here of gap. I don't know that I'd really be able to close that up without hitting my shovel right here, so that's looking pretty good. This is probably a good time to talk about the pros and cons of the two rack systems and things I'm probably going to miss about the ARS system. And by the way, I still have it, so I can always put it back on if I want to. So weight. The ARS rack is pretty heavy. And in fact, you see this is literally just a bracket for holding something onto the main part of the rack that you clamp this on and you put things out here. This is what I was using to hold my rack on, or my awning on, using 3 of these. But everything you clamp onto the outside of it is going to use a bracket, something like this. And this is steel. I mean, this thing is heavy. This thing right here probably weighs, I don't know, a couple of pounds or something like that. The Rhino-Rack is, again, it's a lot lighter. Compatibility with other brackets and aftermarket pieces. I found that there weren't a ton of options when I was trying to mount things. I was able to find solutions, right, for mounting the Roam box. I think you guys have seen that, for mounting hold downs for my tent and straps and things like that. So we overcome this stuff and we found ways to do it. But there weren't a lot of options offered that were built in, kind of like the stow-it brackets that you see for the Rhino-Rack for the shovel and axe, right? I was using kind of the grip fist mounts, rubber mounts and things like that, and there's really no way to lock the... There were probably some aftermarket ones I could have bought, or I probably could have bought the stow-it pieces that lock them on and still used them. But they weren't an integrated system, whereas with Rhino-Rack, you get a complete integrated system of pieces and parts. Now, albeit they're kind of expensive, right? But that's what you pay for. The other one was, I like the way the Rhino-Rack is low profile. The Adventure Rack System rack is tall because it allows you to remove the top, even with the rack on. If I want to remove the roof from the Jeep now, I'm actually going to have to go in and undo a couple of extra bolts that hold that roll bar bracket at the front point of the Rhino-Rack system. So it's a couple of extra steps to be able to remove the top. And then wind noise, as I mentioned before, the wind noise is definitely a bit less with the Rhino-Rack system. And I think that's mostly because of the hoop that goes around the windshield in the front. And of course, I also had the catwalk across the front as well. Quick note on the catwalk. It's pretty cool to be able to get up there and stand on that. But if you ever want to open your hood all the way back to the windshield, you can't do that with the catwalk on there. Did I ever have to do that? No. Could there have been a situation trying to get in there and work in areas where it would have been more convenient to have the hood all the way back? Probably. Things I'm gonna miss about the ARS system. That propane tank mount was pretty freaking cool, right? Being able to clamp that right on the back corner was really nice. Now I'm gonna be moving to probably carrying the propane tank on the rear tire with a strap mount. The antenna mount on the catwalk, that was pretty cool too. It got it up a little higher, kind of better, maybe a better location for coverage, although I could use a taller antenna too. So there's other options. The ARS rack is pretty unique. You do not see a lot of those out in the wild, and it looks pretty badass. My wife loved it. She thought it looked so cool. And in fact, one of her things that she cites that she's gonna miss is she always felt like the ARS rack was kind of like a piece of protection. It's not a roll bar, but she always thought that if a tree fell over, we go to places where the forest is burnt up and there's widowmakers out there, and if a tree fell over on the Jeep, she always felt like, wow, that's gonna save us, so that was pretty cool. And that goes back to the strength piece too. ARS rack is the strongest thing on the planet. I mean, the dynamic and static weight of that thing is incredible. Is the grass really greener on the other side of the fence? We'll see, right?